Welcome back to another episode of the Lender Podcast. My name is Bryce. I'll be your host. And today we're talking about something that I'm pretty excited about, and this is how to make $250,000, $250,000 this year as a hard money lender. And a lot of you might be listening to that and you're like, yikes, that's kind of a novel a goal for either your first or second year in lending, but it's actually maybe a little bit easier than you would think. So I'm excited to talk about that. But first and foremost, let's jump into today's sponsor, which is Lender. Lender is a hard and private money lending origination and servicing platform. So if you're currently using Excel, I highly recommend that you check out Lender. You can go to joinlender, lendr.com, joinlender.com, and check it out. We personally use it in our own business, and it's been great. We use it to accept loan applications, and then we can take those from the pipeline and underwrite the deals, make sure all the numbers make sense, and then match the different investors, and then move it over into the servicing portal. And it's just a great spot to see all of your loans, how they're performing, your monthly payments, all the different things that you need and are required in a lending business. So if you're currently using Excel and you need kind of a better platform to help you scale and grow, I highly recommend that you check out Lender. Join Lender, lendr.com. Okay, let's jump into today's episode because I'm really excited to talk about this because it's something that's really not as difficult as you might think. I cringe a little bit because the internet makes you think that making six figures a year is like so basic and everyone is earning six figures, and that's just not the case. Like if you look at the numbers, the median income across the US, last I checked, it was still like $64,000. And I believe that's for a single individual, and then the household income is somewhere like $76,000. So if you're making $100,000, six figures a year, that is a lot of income. So now let's take that a step above, and you're like, okay, let's see how we can make $250,000 a year. I don't care who you are. If you're making $250,000 a year, with the exception of like living in Boston or California or super high expensive cost of living areas, you can live pretty well on $250,000. And so I want to break down today how you can make $250,000 in your lending business the first year. For me, it really just comes down to the math, and we have to work backwards and say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. So a lot of people don't do the math, and the math is what's going to get you there. The math is what's going to set you free. Let's say we have a target of $250,000 a year. What is that going to take as far as like monthly loan volume, given our point structure and all the different things like that? How are we going to get there? So I'll break it down for my business, but yours might be a little different, but we'll probably be, within the same realm of where our numbers are at. So first and foremost, we charge 3 points and 14%. So we charge a 3% origination fee on the front, just for all our due diligence and the work and the risk and everything like that. And then we charge 14%. Now, this number gets a little convoluted when you try to incorporate your own funds versus somebody else's funds. But just for now, I'm just going to assume that these are all your own funds. So in my lending company, for example, 3 and 14%, we do 6-month loans. There are a couple different ways that we can extend for like an additional point or two up to a year. But most of the time, most of the loans are paid off within 6 months. So at 14%, 6 months or so, half a year, we take that 14% and we just divide it in half, which is basically 7% annualized. So if you take that 7% and you add it to the 3%, the origination fee on the front, you get roughly 10%, which makes it really easy to do the math. So if you want to make $250,000 a year, you take the $250,000 and divide it by the 10% annualized, which would come out to $2.5 million. But $2.5 million is not the amount of cash that you have to necessarily have. That's just the total annual loan volume that you're going to have to do. So if we break that down, a little bit further, if you take 2.5 million and you divide it by 12 months, it comes out to roughly, $200,000, a little bit more, like $210,000 in monthly loan origination volume, which is really not that much. Now, again, this is assuming that you have all of your own capital. Most people starting out, you don't have a $10 million fund or a $50 million fund, or even larger. Like some people have $1 or $2 million that they're lending out, and if you have $1 or $2 million, like that can get you to the $250,000 per year. So it all just comes back from like working backwards, and $200,000 per month in loan volume It's really pretty easy to do, especially if you live in somewhere that's California or Colorado or anything like this with a higher cost of living. It's really pretty achievable. And so, let's say you want to make $500,000 or $1 million a year in, net profit, net income to you. You can figure out how to do that. And the great thing about this is you might be saying, okay, well, I wish I had $1 million or I wish I had $2 million that I could lend. That's okay. Most people, when they're doing these lending and these funds, they don't have the money available to them. And so that's why you bring outside investors, which, yes, you have to pay your investors, a good portion of that interest, but most people will take a spread on that interest from the investor, which is great because you can scale other people's capital faster than you can scale your own. It's a lot easier to get other investors than it is to go out and, save $30,000 or $40,000 or $10,000, whatever it is, to add up enough money to be able to lend these funds out again. So whatever your spread is, so for example, we take a 2% spread on investors' funds. So we pay them 12%, we keep 2%, and then we also keep the origination points. So, if you take the 3% for the origination, the 2% from the spread, that's 5%. So, working backwards, you could do that math, and it would take twice as much loan volume using other people's money to be able to hit that $250,000 goal. So, all that to say, it's very simple. I know it's probably a little bit daunting if you're new to the space and you're not making a ton of money, but it really is pretty achievable. And I think it's a great way to earn a really good income, a 6-figure income without a lot of capital, without a lot of overhead, without a lot of other employees or managerial overhead. It's a great business model to be in to make a pretty good amount of money. So let me know if you have any questions or if you have different perspective on the topic. I love hearing from different listeners on the podcast. But until next week, that's it. Thanks for listening.